Quick breads. Imagine biting into a warm, freshly baked muffin with blueberries bursting in every bite. Or perhaps a buttery biscuit that crumbles perfectly with your morning tea. These delicious treats are examples of quick breads, a fascinating segment of baking that deserves its spotlight. In the realm of bread making, the term rise holds prime importance. Breads rise because of leavening agents, substances that produce gases in doughs and batters. These gases expand during baking, making the bread light and airy. Traditionally, yeast has been the go-to leavening agent, feeding on the sugars in the dough and producing carbon dioxide gas as a byproduct. However, quick breads deviate from this convention. Quick breads, as their name implies, are quick to make. The reason? They don't rely on the slower process of yeast fermentation. Instead, they employ chemical leavening agents such as baking soda or baking powder, and sometimes even both. Baking soda requires an acidic ingredient, like buttermilk or yogurt, in the recipe to produce carbon dioxide gas, while baking powder already contains an acid and just needs moisture. Hence, not all quick bread formulas need an additional acid. These breads are made from soft dough. When preparing them, one must ensure the ingredients are mixed rapidly to keep them tender. A crucial aspect to understand is that overmixing can lead to tough quick breads. Why? Overmixing stimulates gluten development in the flour, and while gluten is essential in yeast breads, it's not our friend in quick breads. Gluten provides structure, but in quick breads, we're aiming for a tender product with a soft crumb. You might be familiar with various types of quick breads, even if you haven't identified them as such. Muffins, biscuits, and even specialty breads like zucchini, corn, and lemon fall under this category. Each of these has its unique characteristics and charm. For instance, scones, a popular teatime treat, are made using the biscuit method, where cold fat is cut into the flour before the addition of liquid. This results in a flaky, layered texture that is distinct from the moist crumb of muffins. Baking these breads might seem straightforward, but there are potential issues that bakers, both novice and experienced, can face. A common one is the bread turning out too dense. This could be because the batter was overmixed, the leavening agent was expired, or too little was used. Another frequent problem is the bread being too dry, often a result of baking for too long or using too little liquid. If your bread has a metallic or soapy taste, it might be because there's too much baking soda or an imbalance between the acid and alkaline ingredients. On the other hand, if your bread has a coarse texture, it could be due to the use of too much leavening agent or an oven temperature that's too low. To troubleshoot, always start by checking the freshness of your ingredients, especially the leavening agents. Then, ensure you're measuring them accurately. Following recipes closely and understanding the characteristics of each ingredient can also save you from a baking disaster. To wrap it up, quick breads are an essential category in the world of baking. Their versatility, coupled with the swiftness in preparation, makes them a favorite among many. And while they come with their set of challenges, understanding the basics and the science behind their rise can lead to delightful results every time. Artisan and yeast breads. The beauty of bread, a staple of our diets for millennia, lies in its simplicity. With few ingredients, we can create countless variations, each with its unique flavor, texture, and aroma. A significant contributor to this magic is yeast, a tiny living organism that has a tremendous impact on the bread-making process. When we think of yeast, it's essential to understand that it's more than just a component in a recipe. It's a living entity, requiring sustenance to thrive. By providing it with carbohydrates, such as those found in flours and sugars, we initiate a remarkable process called fermentation. As the yeast consumes these carbohydrates, it releases carbon dioxide gas. This gas is trapped within the gluten network of our dough, causing it to rise and giving bread its soft, airy texture. Navigating the baking aisle, you'll come across various types of yeast. Active dry yeast and instant dry yeast are among the most common. While both are user-friendly, there are subtle differences. Active dry yeast, characterized by its larger granules, generally needs to be dissolved in warm water before being introduced to the other ingredients. In contrast, instant dry yeast's finer granules allow bakers to mix it directly with flour. Then there's compressed yeast or fresh yeast, which is moister and favored by many professionals. Interestingly, all these yeasts belong to the species Saccharomyces cerevisiae. However, not every yeast variety is suitable for baking. For instance, brewer's yeast, although a yeast, is primarily used in brewing beer and isn't typically used for bread. Shifting gears, the process of mixing and kneading dough is equally vital. Kneading develops the gluten, enabling it to trap the carbon dioxide produced by fermenting yeast effectively. Whether done traditionally by hand or with the modern convenience of mixers, this step ensures the dough's consistency is just right. Once kneaded, patience is key as the dough must rise, often doubling in size, before being shaped into your chosen bread form. The term artisan bread has gained traction in recent years. Artisan breads prioritize quality and craftsmanship, often utilizing unbleached and organic flours. Baked in smaller batches, these breads represent the pinnacle of bread making, marrying tradition with innovation. This dedication to quality and the use of premium ingredients often means artisan breads come with a heftier price tag. So, if we consider the yeast varieties we've discussed, it's evident that while active dry yeast, instant dry yeast, and compressed yeast are all used in baking, brewer's yeast takes a different path, finding its purpose in the brewing of beer. Enriched yeast breads. The world of baking is vast and varied, and among the many creations that come from an oven, enriched yeast breads hold a special place. These are not your typical breads, they're sweet, tender, and often filled with delightful surprises like nuts, fruits, and swirls of cinnamon or chocolate. From the soft pull of cinnamon buns to the intricate braids of challah, and from the rich coils of babka to the sugary rings of donuts, enriched yeast breads are a treat to both the baker and the eater. Understanding enriched yeast doughs. At its core, an enriched yeast dough is a sweetened dough. The sweetness can come from various sources, including sugar, honey, or syrups. But it's not just the sweetness that sets them apart. These doughs also often contain additional fats like butter, milk, or eggs, which lend a soft texture and rich flavor. The richness and sweetness of the dough can create some unique challenges for bakers. For instance, sugar, while providing sweetness, can also inhibit yeast activity. This is because sugar competes with yeast for water, which yeast requires to become active. As a result, enriched bread formulas may contain a bit more yeast than lean doughs, ensuring that despite the high sugar content, the dough will still rise effectively. When it comes to the mixing method for these doughs, there are a few tried and true techniques. One such technique is the sponge mixing method. This method is a two-stage process where yeast, liquid, and half of the flour are first combined. After this mixture rises and ferments, the rest of the flour is added to form the dough. This method develops flavor and can help with the overall structure of the bread. Kneading and handling with care. Enriched doughs are delicate creatures. Their softness means that they need careful handling, as they can be fragile. For example, when making brioche, a classic enriched bread, the dough is first kneaded until smooth. It's only after this kneading process that fat, often butter, is added. This process ensures that the gluten is well developed before the fat is introduced, as fat can interfere with gluten development. Furthermore, enriched doughs generally need a longer kneading time compared to lean yeast doughs. This extended kneading helps develop the gluten which provides structure to the bread, especially crucial given the tenderness of the dough. Baking and frying perfection. Baking is both a science and an art. When baking bread, there are several signs that can indicate perfection. The internal temperature of the bread should reach between 190 to 210, which ensures the loaf is cooked through. Additionally, tapping the bottom of a loaf should produce a hollow sound. And, of course, the bread should have a deep, uniform brown color, indicating that it's baked evenly and has a pleasant crust. For those delving into the world of donuts, frying becomes the cooking method of choice. Here, the oil used should be neutral, so it doesn't impart any strong flavors to the donut. Moreover, maintaining the right temperature is key. If the oil is too hot, the donuts will burn on the outside before they're cooked inside. Too cool, and they'll absorb too much oil, becoming greasy and unpalatable. After frying, it's good practice to cover the deep fryer to prevent any impurities from contaminating the oil. Navigating the challenges of hot and humid climates. Baking brioche or other enriched breads in hot and humid environments presents unique challenges. The increased temperature and humidity can make doughs rise faster, but it can also make them stickier and harder to handle. Bakers can employ techniques like chilling ingredients beforehand, using a cool area for fermentation, or adjusting the flour hydration to cope with such conditions.